Well, good morning and welcome to Coffee with Ken. I'm Ken Biberaj, a managing director at Savills, a leading tenant advisory commercial real estate firm. In the news today, 3 million Ukrainians have fled since the Russian invasion. And Tom Brady announced this week that he is not going to retire anymore and he's going to return to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Today's topic is From the Huddle to the Hospital, and we are joined by Sam Gado, former NFL star turned doctor. Sam, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
We're hanging in there. So it's funny. So we're both here in Virginia. It looks like I'm in Northern Virginia, and you're down in Lynchburg, right?
Yes. It was a pleasant surprise to find out that we were so close to one another.
Amazing. And so, wait, give us a quick. We like to kind of start these conversations now. It's funny because we're about literally to the date 2 years from when everyone kind of started staying at home, and COVID really became kind of what we thought was going to be a minor inconvenience and really just transformed all of our lives for 2 years. What has the last 2 years been like for you and your family and everybody?
Yeah, obviously COVID has had a lot to do with that. But in the last 2 years, when COVID first hit, I was in residency in St. Louis, and we were, just trying to figure out what we had on our hands, just like really anybody else. And then we were in the process of transitioning to this job here in Lynchburg, Virginia. I work at Blue Ridge ENT, which is just a moderate size ENT clinic. And, I started in July of 2020. It was kind of interesting just starting your practice in the midst of COVID, and you're an ENT practice. And so we had a lot of the things that the patients that we saw were a little hesitant to come to the office. And so a lot of ebbs and flows since then. We've had, we went from 3 to 4 kids, and now things from the COVID perspective seem to be, shifting a little bit. With the vaccines, I think people are just starting to come in a little bit more. And so it now seems like things are close to back to normal, although I don't think they'll ever get back to completely normal.
Well, look, I think it's your journey is just so fascinating. I mean, going from the NFL into residency and now full-on practice, and excited to talk about your future and what that's going to hold. But take us back a little bit. Talk a little about your early journey. I mean, born in Nigeria, talk a little bit about your family, how you ended up in the United States, where you ended up, and what that's been like for you in your early years to kind of, make that transition.
Yes. So I was born and raised in Nigeria, which some people may or may not know. And we came to the United States in 1991. Very interesting story. My dad was looking for a higher education, and somebody saw him and saw that he had potential, and essentially gave him a scholarship to get his master's and his MDiv in seminary. And we had been apart for about 2 years, and so a family that knew my dad, a church family that knew my dad, saw that he had a family that was, across the waters, and so they generous donation brought us to the United States, and so we've been here ever since. It's been a wonderful opportunity, and a lot has come from that. But that's kind of where I come from.
Wow! And then you guys ended up in South Carolina, I believe, right?
Correct. Yes. It was Columbia International University was a school that my dad was attending, and ended up going to Ben Lippen High School, which is there as well, and started playing football. And the love for football and medicine was kind of birthed at Ben Lippen.
I mean, so tell us about that, right? Like, you have this very interesting kind of, dual track, right? Where you clearly had a love and passion for football, but also medicine. Like, was it in high school? What sparked interest in both of those kind of lanes?
Yeah, so the first interest in medicine was my friend's father, Dr. Rick Milne, who's now since passed, was just a great man. My parents were sending me to this private school, but they couldn't afford to keep me there. They sent me there for a year because I was having a hard time in the public school system. And so this generous physician said, you know what, I want to support him. And I didn't know this till years after that he was the one. And but ever since then, I mean, I remember meeting him, and he was such a big, he was just a gentle, kind man. It left an impression on me. And I remember thinking to myself, it'd be kind of cool to do what he did. And then around my sophomore year, when football was starting to take shape, up to that point, I was interested in several other sports, but I didn't really show any promise in football. That the idea came to my mind, hey, you might actually be able to be a doctor. And so then I just started working to that end my sophomore year in high school. And at the same time, I think football started taking off and my body started changing. And my junior and senior year, I was in a position to go to college to play football.
Nice. And then you went to Liberty, right?
Correct. I did. I went to Liberty, got a scholarship there. It was given a wonderful opportunity there as well. And I showed up with a bunch of talent and I ended up kind of sitting on I shouldn't say I was sitting on the bench, but I was a third string backup for the 4 years that I was there because we just had so much talent. But developed a great relationship with my coach. And even though I wasn't a starter, I got to play a good bit. And I think his coach at the time was Ken Karcher. And I think he saw that I was an easy, I guess, player to have on his team. Didn't have to worry about me so much. At that time, I was really focused on getting into medical school. And when it was all said and done, I had an opportunity to keep playing because I had to sit out a year for medical school before I could apply to medical school. And he made a call and gave me my opportunity.
Amazing. I mean, this is the funny part. I was joking with your sister about this, right? Like some people go to Europe for a gap year or do something else, right? Like you graduate, you want to go to med school, but you take some time in between and you went to the National Football League. I mean, talk a little bit about your football career. I mean, it's pretty incredible. We were joking before we went live. I mean, we've been doing these coffee talks for like 2 years now. And it was fascinating the amount of calls and emails I got from people about you being on here who are just so enthusiastic. I mean, you have this like cult following. So, I mean, tell us about it. Like, how did you end up in the NFL? And why do you think there still remains this like, really just genuine and honest kind of love for you and what you did in sports?
That's a great question. And I think in many respects, I don't understand it. I just accept it. So yeah, I mean, marriage will teach you that. You may not understand something, but you just accept it to be true. And I think that's kind of the same phenomenon here. That was an interesting time. So I had a year to kill before I could apply, and I knew that it wasn't necessary. It was a calculated decision that if I didn't make the team, I wasn't wasting any time, and if I made the team as a practice squad player at the time, it was $79,000 a year, and I thought that's just as good as any other job. So why not? Let's just give it a shot. And I knew that I had the skills to do it. I just really needed the opportunity, and my coach, through his relationship, called and they gave me the opportunity, and I got a chance to stick with the Kansas City Chiefs on their practice squad, and then they had to let me go due to injuries. The Packers picked me up, and due to injuries, they had to play me. And I got another opportunity there, and I just kept, I said, what, I'm just going to go with it. At that point, I'd always knew that if I hit it, then I wouldn't have to take out loans for medical school. So it really felt like it was synergistic with the ultimate goal of going to medical school.
I mean, amazing. But diving in really quick, I mean, what I find fascinating a little bit is this kind of your deep faith that you have. And then also these amazing opportunities through circumstance that have happened, right? Whether it was even at Liberty, somebody gets injured, deep bench, you get the opportunity to kind of get out there and play and get seen. With the Packers, I think it was a series of injuries that happened there before, 6 or something, right before you even got the chance to come out. I mean, how do you think about that? Like some of these opportunities and doors that have opened up through, circumstances outside of your control. And how do you absorb that and think about it? How does that tie to just your overall, faith? I mean, I know that's important to you.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for asking that. Throughout this whole process, after a while, you start thinking to yourself, this has to be more than coincidence. And I remember in 8th grade, I remember praying this prayer that I asked, I mean, and a prayer only a 13, 14-year-old would make, but I just said, hey, I literally asked God if I could play in the National Football League. And I remember my sophomore year in high school, asking him if I could play or if I could go to medical school. And I was never really, I've never felt like I was gifted, significantly gifted athletically or intellectually, but I really have always felt that just praying and asking the Lord to just give me the desires of my heart in this realm, and just holding it out loosely and not really hoping and counting on the outcome to be a specific thing, but just kind of walking day by day and seeing what happened. And I'm just, whenever I think about my life, I always think, man, I really do believe this was the Lord's work in my life. And it compels me to live really a life of gratitude, because I really do believe I'm standing on so many shoulders. I mean, I'm here because of so many people who gave me an opportunity, and you don't forget that.
Amazing. Do you miss football? I mean, what was part of it, the desire to maybe stay longer and keep playing? And were you always going to kind of make this pivot back and pursue what seems to be your real passion to be in medicine?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't really miss football. I missed it the first year because I could physically do it. When I was my first year in medical school, my wife and I thought about going back because I was healthy and I didn't retire because I was injured. I retired because I didn't get picked up. But then after that, I just never really looked back, in large part because one, I just couldn't do it anymore physically, even if I wanted to. And two, I remembered the purpose that I started this was ultimately to get here, and here I am. So once I put my hand to the plow in that sense, I really didn't look back. But it's been a wonderful journey because it at some point the transition was going to need to occur. And I'm so thankful that I was able to make that transition out of sports with something that I really love to do.
So let's talk a little bit more about medicine. I mean, what type of practice are you in? What are you doing today, and where do you see yourself going in terms of your own practice and giving back through medicine?
Yeah, so right now we're at a medium-sized practice in Lynchburg, Virginia. There's 5 physicians, and it's been a wonderful opportunity here because I'm actually here with my best friend and college roommate. We played football together at Liberty, and he was the best man at my wedding. And he went off to medical school, and he's actually really why I'm interested in ear, nose, and throat. So we met again in residency, while in medical school. He was doing his residency while I was doing my medical school, because I had a little bit of a gap there, playing football, and he went straight through. And then after he finished, he came here, and then my first year in residency, he kept saying, "Hey, there's going to be a job here for you." I didn't really believe it, but I was like, "Well, if it's there, it's there." And sure enough, 5 years later, there was an opportunity, and it's a hard thing to pass up, to work with your best friend and to kind of build something here, and that's what we've been doing since.
That's amazing. And now, look, you've had the chance to spend some time back in Nigeria, right? Talk a little bit about that. I mean, how often are you going back? What is this kind of future going to hold for you in terms of being a more active member of the community back home?
Yeah, that great question, because it really ties into the previous question and why I'm actually here in Lynchburg. So it's always, ever since I would say my sophomore year in college, I've had this strong desire to go back to Nigeria, and I've never really known what that would look like. We did my sophomore or my third year in residency. I got a chance to spend 1 month doing whatever I wanted to, and so I chose to go to Nigeria and just sit in the healthcare system there and see what it's like. Because at that point, obviously, my life had taken a medical turn, and I'd had the opportunity to pursue medicine in the field that I wanted. And so I wanted to, I had a better idea of what avenue my involvement in Nigeria would be. And I got a chance to see some pretty amazing things. There's some things that you just can't see for a week, spending a week there. And I walked away just thinking, I think there's a way to address this problem. And so since then, my sister and I have started the Jonah Inheritance. And it's a nonprofit that looks to address the healthcare crisis in Nigeria. And so that's what really I've been doing. Part of the reason I came here to Lynchburg was to develop the skills to be able to do this in Nigeria, in running a practice and running being part of a surgery center. All those things have been towards that end.
So Nigeria is the largest economy in Africa, but the fourth worst healthcare system. Talk about this kind of dichotomy, like on the ground there. Like, what are the conditions like? I mean, compared to what you're dealing with, in the United States, for example.
Yeah, it's the largest economy, as you said, the 25th largest in the world, but yet it has the largest volume of people living below the poverty line, according to the World Poverty Clock. So there's this huge discrepancy between, even though there are resources there, it seems to be accumulated disproportionately. And so this results in this huge inequity when it comes to health access and quality, which is just problematic. So when you have an economy that's the best, one of the things that they have going for them is that they're able to train and equip doctors. But when you have doctors who are well equipped and well trained, but an infrastructure that's the fourth worst in the world, then you end up having a situation where doctors just don't want to stay. And they've just invested so much of their time and their effort and their energy, and there are just no opportunities for them. So they go somewhere else to seek better opportunities.
So you have the talent. It's just the infrastructure and the care and the equipment and the supplies needed, right?
Correct. Yeah. So Nigeria is one of the largest exporters of physicians in the world.
Wow.
So that's saying some things, but at the end of the day, people long to do what they were trained to do. And so when you look at all these things, you begin thinking to yourself, hey, there's just, it makes sense while doctors are leaving. And so that worsens the healthcare inequality and the access to care issue that is really problematic. And when I saw, that's what I saw in 2018. And I just started thinking to myself, what does it look like to change this? What does it look like to change the narrative?
So when you're thinking about this on a macro level, right, we have these conversations at work all the time that everyone is focused on the hunt for talent, right? And it's like, you'll do anything to find the talent. So this just strikes me as such a unique dynamic where the talent's there, they're just leaving because the resources, which are, you can buy and build and so on. So how do you try to address that with Jonah's inheritance? Like, what lane are you trying to fit? Where are you trying to address? And over time, how do you think you can make an impact?
I love the question. I think what we're trying to do at the Jonah Inheritance is to improve this problem of health care quality and access for the poor by creating opportunities for Africa's most promising physicians. At the heart of that, we believe that if you invest in people, people solve problems, not programs, not systems. People are the ones that are the solutions to problems. And we think that Africans' physicians are the solution for Africa's healthcare crisis. And so we think that this is the most cost-effective, it's the most sustainable, the most impactful way to go about doing this. It's everywhere you look, you see that if there is truly a problem that needs to be addressed, investing in people and the right kind of people will truly bring about the best results.
I think in one of our prior conversations or in chatting with Ruth, the kind of notion of, focusing on tangible, measurable impact as being something very important to you in life and faith and giving back. Talk a little bit about that. I don't know if it was your father or where you kind of got that kind of mantra that you actually have to have a tangible, measurable impact on things you're going to spend time and energy on. I mean, how does that play into what you're trying to do every day?
Yeah. So I think with my father, thankfully, and my mom, both were very well-educated people. And at the end of the day, I mean, if you can't quantify how you're making something better, it's hard to say that you truly are making something better. And so when many of the measures, at least that are taken, or the programs or any attempts to improve situations in Africa, in our specific context, Nigeria, whenever they're taken, there's no real way to know whether or not this is truly making the impact that you want. And so one of the things that we really want to focus on is when we actually recruit these physicians to have health metrics, to have really strict accountability with regard to financing, to have these tangible, measurable ways that really say, hey, we are meeting the needs of the people in the community. And so sometimes that means that you have to actually spend a lot of time and effort and energy into creating the right environment to be able to, one, quantify your efforts. And it can't just be, hey, we're going to put up a building and see as many people as possible. No, there needs to be a way. Are you reproducing your knowledge? Are you reproducing yourself? How many people have gone from the poverty line to slightly above $1.90 a day? You know, these are things that are really important to us and help us learn and exactly where we're going and see if we're getting better.
Amazing. Tell us how you got the name Jonah's Inheritance.
Yeah, the Jonah Inheritance. It's really it's an amalgamation of our parents' name. So my mom's maiden name is Jonah, and Gado means inheritance. And so this is started by my sister and I, and so we are the Jonah Inheritance. This really is a continuation of the work that my dad has done in Nigeria. He has taken more of a ministerial approach, and we're hoping to take more of a healthcare approach.
And Samkon means what?
Yes, it means truth. It means truth. It's actually a weird name, and I always thought it was cool. But when I grew up and my mom told me that it was not a common name for even Nigerians, I was like, okay, well that makes me even more that much more unique. So it's not just weird here for the United States; it's weird for Nigeria too.
Oh, that's interesting. So at a high level, I mean, what drives you, right? Like folks sometimes tune in and then they want to kind of understand the motivations that get, the guest out of bed every day. Like what's motivating you? I mean, where does it come from?
I think knowing that what's, sitting in this office, looking back at this, football and the many opportunities that's afforded, it really compels, it makes me believe and think and know that I didn't get here on my own, that this is really just, this is really just a reflection of all the many people that believed in me. And they are countless. I mean, we've touched on a few here. Mm-hmm. And I think what drives me is from the moment these visions or these dreams came into being, I always felt like I owed it, that this was given to me, not just for my own benefit, but for the benefit of others. And so really the Jonah Inheritance is just a reflection of that. We want so desperately, to create opportunities for others in the same way that opportunities were created for us, that really allowed us to change the narrative of our family. But in order to be successful in this, we really need people to join our team. People who are willing to believe that high quality and sustainable healthcare is possible for the poor. People like yourselves, I guess, people that are listening, and without people like you, there's really not much hope for a nonprofit like us. We really want so desperately to create opportunities and change the narrative for those that are in Nigeria and don't have the chance that we have. Mm-hmm.
So obviously folks can go to the website and contribute to the Jonah's Inheritance. How else can people get involved if they're moved to do so? I mean,
yeah, so you can show your support really by becoming either a one-time or recurring donor. And in large part, these dollars are meant to fund really the large scheme of starting a medical center in the capital city of Abuja. It's going to cost about $15 million total to get it to full fruition, but that's obviously staged. We bought 30 acres of land, and to secure that and to develop that, it's going to cost $100,000. And then we have a medical trip coming up in May. That's where we're going to be teaching some medical students and residencies specific ENT procedures, so they can duplicate this and train and employ these and people there instead of just seeing a bunch of people. And that's going to cost us $50,000. And so anything you give towards us will actually help towards those three ends.
Amazing. And then walk us through what the next decade is going to look like for you. I imagine once you get the center built, are you going to be traveling back and forth? Are you going to be in Nigeria? Where do you see yourself over the next decade?
Great question, and I see myself there indefinitely. So I think what I see my role here right now is just to kind of raise funds and raise support until the medical center is built. And then once it's there, I see myself there, kind of spending the rest of my life seeing this, reproducing this in not just Abuja, but other parts of Nigeria as well.
Oh, amazing. And last kind of macro question. I mean, since you've been so involved in the U.S. healthcare system, what's the state of U.S. healthcare just in general? Like, high level, like what are you disappointed in now that you're kind of, seeing it firsthand? What can be improved? What's the state of healthcare here?
Yeah, so a lot of the same issues that we're addressing in Nigeria are still here. We still have the same access to care. And part of that has a lot to do with just the way that our system is run is not the most efficient. There's a lot of waste. And this is going to get somewhat political, I guess, but I think what I've seen here is that when the people who are actually dispensing the care are able to make decisions that they think are the best to bring about care for the patient, you tend to have better outcomes, better results. And that's really what we're trying to do in Nigeria. I've seen here in just our own practice that we can do the same procedure in a surgery center that's run by physicians for exponentially less than you can in a hospital. And in large part, that's not because of the hospital's problem, but just the systems and the regulations and the structure is just made it so that it costs so much more to do it at a hospital when the same procedure can be performed for pennies on the dollar across the street.
Wow.
But that's probably another conversation.
No, we'll save that for healthcare, man. just curious. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Sam, it's been such a treat getting to spend some time with you today. We'll be watching and excited to do whatever we can to help kind of promote the Jonah's Inheritance and everything you're working on. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Well, look, everybody tuning in. Thanks for watching. Our next Coffee with Ken will be next Monday, March 21st, with Brian Fallon, the Executive Director of Demand Justice. We'll be talking about the future of the Supreme Court. You can register for that and watch past sessions at www.coffeewithken.com. Until then, talk soon. Thanks, Sam.